In this video, we talk about a mortgage cosigner. How do they work? What are the requirements? When you should actually get a mortgage cosigner? And finally, how do you get them off your mortgage? That's coming right up.
Welcome to Home Buyers School, brought to you by Brookfield Residential.
Hi everyone, I'm Carl and welcome to another Home Buyer School video, a channel where you get the latest strategies, tactics, and tips from home buying experts. And remember, if this is your first time on this channel and you want to get the latest strategies from the experts, hit the subscription button below, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. So today I'm talking with Nashaba Syed, mortgage specialist with the Bank of Montreal. And today the question we're going to answer is, how does a mortgage cosigner work? So Mo, what is a mortgage cosigner to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a mortgage cosigner, technically what they are, they're considered to be someone that you can add to the mortgage application to help if you're missing some sort of information. It could be there's an income requirement or there's a credit requirement. There could be an asset requirement, depending on what the lender is looking for. So a cosigner is definitely there to kind of fill the gaps of whatever you guys are missing in the application.
So when would you actually use a cosigner?
The best time to use a cosigner is when you're not qualifying on your own, right? When you're having issues of qualifying, like I said, it could be credit related, like you might have had some prepayments in the past or some late payments in the past that's affecting your credit and your ability to borrow today. A cosigner can help and kind of alleviate that. What it does, it just adds a little level of security to the lender, right? Saying that, hey, listen, we have one more person that they can rely on, just God forbid, if something does happen. Or same thing with the income part. If your income is slightly lower than what you need it to be at, and this home is not meeting the stress test, the cosigner can help alleviate that with their income and their credit.
So how much does a cosigner actually help with the mortgage? Is there like a maximum limit that they're allowed to, I don't know, contribute percentage-wise for the mortgage? How does that work?
Yeah, the way it works is that, so all three applicants would be applying for the mortgage, right? And then the debt would be shared equally among the three. So there's not really a percentage amount. They could be helping as little as 5% as maximum as 100%, depending on the strength of the cosigner. The stronger the cosigner, the better. So when you are looking for a cosigner, try it to be like immediate family, because the lender always wants to know like what's the relationship, what's the stake for the cosigner to be able to go and take on this extra debt. So it could be immediate family, father, mother, brother, sister, etc., or someone else that could be considered immediate family, and someone that has good credit and good income, someone that could actually make, if whatever you're lacking, kind of cover that with the bank so they feel comfortable enough with the application.
I'm surprised that when you said 100%, so they could actually, as a cosigner, you could take 100% on of the mortgage. So like, let's say, you know, your brother has no income, so you could essentially take that mortgage for him.
Absolutely.
Entirely. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because the way the cosigner works, the cosigner is, there's no difference between a primary applicant and a cosigner. The banks or the lender will treat them exactly the same. They're the same, right? Whether it's primary, secondary, cosigner, they're considered to be owners of the home and liability stake within the mortgage as well. There's a couple of different scenarios. Let's say if your credit doesn't qualify for us to use any income, because there are some hard, fast rules when it comes down to a level of credit that is required for a mortgage application. If you fall below that threshold, then the cosigner would have to use their 100% of their income to cover the stress test, to cover the debt of that mortgage. So sometimes it could be as much as 100%, or sometimes your income's great, your credit's great, but you're slightly lacking and they only need to add an extra 5% of their income to help qualify. Every situation is going to be different, but the good thing is you can go from 5 to 100% depending on what your needs are.
And remember, if you want to know more about how much you can get approved for a mortgage, watch our video above and in the description below. So I think you already talked about the requirements for a cosigner. Like obviously it's like the bank wants to know someone you know that you know. Any other specific requirements, or that's pretty much just as long as they have good income and good credit?
Yeah, requirements are going to be that they're going to be homeowners with you. That's something that's missed, right? So they technically are a share, they have a share in that home, right? So picking a cosigner is very important. It's something that you should do with a lot of thought and consideration, because they will own that home just as much as you do. They will also have a liability to pay back as much as you do, right? So technically they're in it with you, and just like as you are. So look at it that way, and make sure that they have good credit, good income. The whole idea is to make the application look as strong as possible to fill the gaps that you might be lacking or missing.
Well, let's take a look at it from the perspective of being a co-signer then. What is the impact on you? Like, imagine if you're taking on a $400,000 home, 50%, right? How does that impact your ability to, let's say, buy a new home or your credit, or how, like, what are the impacts?
Absolutely. So the way it looks like is that you are actually that homeowner, right? You might not live there as a co-signer. You might just be helping out a family member, but that shows up on your credit bureau and on your assets and liabilities as you are that homeowner, meaning the full payment counts against you. They're not going to take 1/3 of that payment or half of that payment. It's 100% of that payment that's going to apply to you in any future lendings you might have, whether it to be buy a car, whether it to be buy a home for yourself, whether it to be any type of lending whatsoever. So once again, a co-signer should also be very careful, right? And know all their details before becoming a co-signer, because sometimes it takes some time to get off. It could be as soon as 6 months. It could be a couple of years depending on what the requirements are, depending on what they need to do. So definitely have that conversation with someone. It's great to help out family members, 100%. We should be, if we can do it, we definitely should try, but know what you're getting into. Have a conversation with the lender. Maybe if you feel uncomfortable with your family members there, book a separate meeting, have a one-on-one with them to find out exactly what the implications are to you, to see if you can actually live up to that implications or live up to that responsibility of being a co-signer.
Is there a difference between a co-signer and a co-borrower?
Technically, in the eyes of the bank, no. So we consider the co-signer to be a co-applicant, right? Which is a joint applicant, which is part owner of the home and a part part liability owner of the mortgage as well. So in the bank of the eye, we look at it no differently.
And then finally, what happens if you have a co-signer with bad credit?
Then technically they really wouldn't be a co-signer.
Yeah.
Right? Because like if they're not really helping alleviate the application or making the application any stronger, then it's probably best not to bring that co-signer on. Like that's a question that your mortgage specialist can actually have with you. Sometimes clients bring in a co-signer and they're actually hurting the application more than they're helping it. They might have their own sets of debts, they might have lower income, they might have bad credit. So once again, like having a co-signer, it has to kind of fit in your scenario with your application. So your lender can guide you and your mortgage specialist can guide you on that. And if it doesn't work, it's probably best to find a different co-signer.
So Mo, how do you get a co-signer off your mortgage?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. We get that question quite a bit when clients are coming in. So the way I explain this to my clients is that your co-signer is there to fill a gap, right? So there's obviously a gap in your application. We need to first find out what that gap is. It could be credit related if your credit score is not where it needs to be at. It could be income related if your income level is not there. So take a co-signer off could take as short as 6 months. It could take longer. But what needs to happen is that you need to fill that missing gap that the co-signer is bringing in. So if it's income related, you would need to be able to replace the income of the co-signer with your income. You might get a raise, you might get a new job, you might pick up some part-time work. Those things can help alleviate that, but it really just depends on what the gap was at that time. It could be credit related where your credit's not where it needs to be at, and then you need to work on your credit. It could take 6 months, it could take a year depending on your bureau. That could actually help. So first we identify what the gap is, what the co-signer is filling, and then to take them off, we have to replace that gap. And then yes, it's something that we do at the bank once your mortgage is already set up. It's just called a covenant change, something that your bank and your lender can discuss with you further.
So let's say if like you were co-signing and then you had to take somebody off, you have to replace it, or what if you just want to take it on by yourself? Is that okay too? Or they'd have to do a new check on you, a new mortgage stress test, and what happens?
So anytime you make changes to an application, anytime you make changes to a mortgage, it has to go through the reapproval process because now you're changing the terms, you're changing the dynamic of the application. So we would have to do an application at that time. So if you want to take the co-signer off, we would see if you qualify to actually take this debt on yourself. Maybe a year ago you didn't, you could today. If you have higher income, your credit has gone better, we will tell you during the application process if it's possible. If not, then we might come back to you and say, listen, we've tried, those gaps are still there. right? It could be the income. Yes, your income has increased, but not to a level that we can take this cosigner off, or your credit has increased, but not to the threshold that we need. So you might need to keep the cosigner a little bit longer, but we will advise you, or the mortgage specialist should be advising you on what the process is and the steps to take and the timeline on that.
Great. Do you have anything else to add?
No, absolutely. I think the best thing to do in this situation is just have like a proper conversation. Like if your application is not getting, usually a cosigner comes in when your application is not getting approved, right? There's something missing. So have a conversation with your lender, with your mortgage specialist. Say, listen, I can get a cosigner. What are the requirements? What do I need? Do they need to have a certain level of income? What is my application missing that I can fill with a cosigner? And that way you can actually, when you're looking for a cosigner, you know exactly what to look for and have the conversation with them and then explain to them exactly what a cosigner is, right? And then what your plans are in the future.
Great. So the question of the day I have for you is, have you ever been a cosigner and what was your experience? Or have you ever used a cosigner and what was your experience with that? Let us know in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. And remember, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
That's another edition of Homebuyer School. Tune in next time for more expert tips and tricks. And visit homebuyerschool.ca to bring you one step closer to finding your dream home. As with everything, it would be great if you like and share our videos. Also, please let us know if you have any home buying questions you want us to answer.